Parish Council, serving as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to order at 3:03 p.m. Please rise for the prayer. Roll call by the pledge. Oh, I'm sorry, roll call.
We take this moment to acknowledge Almighty God and thank Him for our bountiful blessings, especially for the parish's natural resources. We pray that entering this hurricane season, everyone will get prepared and the season will be a peaceful one. We also pray that we will be spared from all harm and destruction. We pray that this government body, comprised of both council and administration, will always serve our parish with honesty, humility, and equality to all, and for the wisdom to know right and from wrong, and the courage to do that which is right.
Amen. We're going to follow Dr. Gui into the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much.
Number 2, executive session. There is none. Number 3, status report by the Executive Port Director.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, I have nothing of significance to report during this time frame.
Any questions from fellow board members? From the audience? Please step up to the mic and state your name and address.
Is there any update on the Venture Global announcement, or what's the status of Venture Global coming in?
Excuse me, sir. Can you state your name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. David Gilliott, District 3.
David, we have not gotten any specific update from them.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
No other questions? Moving along to the next item, please.
3A, financial report, budget to actual. There is none. Number 4, bids and advertisements. There are none. Number 5, introduction of ordinances and resolutions. Mr. Chairman, we have one. This is for Commissioner Roussel. A resolution authorizing the Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District to execute a preliminary agreement between the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District and NOLA Oil Terminal, LLC, to finance the acquisition of land and the construction of dock, wharf, blending, storage facility improvements, and any additional improvements related thereto, approving the form and authorizing the publication of a notice of public hearing and notice of intent to sell bonds, making application to the State Bond Commission for approval of said bonds, and providing for other matters in connection with the foregoing. That is all for the introductions.
Thank you, Ms. Barb.
Item number 6A, ordinance of public hearing pursuant to Article 6, Section 601E of the Plaquemines Parish Charter. There are none. Item B, a resolution adopting new and updated policies of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, specifically a policy on policies, code of ethics, and workplace conduct, procurement and public works policy, and telecommuting policy.
Yeah, I'm going to offer it as read. Ask for a second.
Second.
Commissioner Newberry, can you please?
Yeah, this is, we've been working on this for quite some time, and this is just adopting the policies. We've had significant enough time to have any Q&A on this. So I'll tell you what, I'll turn this over to administration. They may elaborate on a little bit, or any board members may have any questions. I'll let Shimbrell talk first.
Good afternoon. As Ms. Newberry stated, we have been working on this project for about a year now. with reevaluating the port's policies related to procurement and those in connection with it. In this resolution, as she stated, we have issued some drafts back in March. We have been working with the board, setting up meetings, discussing them, reviewing the drafts, and this is the resolution that would adopt those final drafts that we have produced.
Thank you, Shimbrow.
Commissioner Russo?
Yes, as you know, we have been working on this for quite some time. I was in most of the meetings, and we have a whole list of changes. However, I haven't heard anything about the final draft until 4:30 yesterday afternoon, and I immediately responded with a email requesting that we would defer it for 2 days, till the next meeting, to be able to review what the final version looks like. I know the public has asked for copies of this to review as well. They haven't been afforded any of the final documents. And once again, I ask that we defer it for 2 weeks to know what we're voting on. I have gotten no response from the last meeting that we had where recommendations were made. And it seems to be the sticking point of minor issues to some, major to others, on the professional services acquisition. And I found it quite interesting last night when I asked for the 2-week delay, that another email was forwarded out saying, we urge you immediate adoption of this. Now, we also have on the agenda today to extend the Russell's contract, the consulting firm who prepared this, till the end of the year. So we are willing to extend the consulting contract till the end of the year, but not willing to delay for 2 weeks to allow us to read the document that was sent to us last night, which includes over 100 pages. So if there's not going to be a delay, I cannot support the policies until I understand them and read them completely. And I do glance through one of them, and I do have an amendment if we plan on voting on it today.
As stated in the email as well last night, yesterday evening, that was sent, there was only one addition or one clarification that was made to one paragraph in one of the drafts. All the other policies, with exception to that one paragraph, has not changed since April 19th. And when those policies were sent to the board prior to that board meeting, shortly after that draft was sent. Again, so the drafts did not change. It was clearly stated exactly what language was added to that paragraph to make the clarification and make that paragraph read clear as requested in a meeting with Mr. Roussel when we discussed that paragraph.
And the first notification I received that we were moving on this was at 4:30 last night, because I've never been provided the final document until I talked to Ms. Newberry yesterday, or prior to that last day or so, and expressed my concerns about this. Now, I don't know what role she had in it, or she's familiar with it, or she went back and told you that, but that's what I was waiting on, is the final draft to be able to make comments. Now, I got it at 4:30, and like I said, I asked for a 2-week delay. If not, I'm going to move for an amendment to clarify at least the one part of the document that I was able to review in a procurement policy.
Well, no, Mr. Roussel, Ms. Trudy did not delay or relay your message. I did not receive a message from you yourself requesting any of those drafts. So I apologize if 4:30 yesterday wasn't ample enough time to review the paragraph that we changed, and that I made sure that I made it clear. But as I stated, none of the other policies, with exception to one paragraph, changed since April 19th. And with that, and with the paragraph that did change being clearly communicated, that is what urged us to recommend that we move forward with the policies. As you stated, we do have an amendment on the table to extend the contract. This project included different phases. We are still in phase 1. We cannot move forward with the other phases until this phase is completed. So we do have work that's left to be done, and we're trying to get that done by the end of the year. So delaying it another 2 weeks will just delay the other phases as well.
Well, I would appreciate a notice prior to 4:30, the day before the meeting, that this is going to be moved on.
I think it's no different than any other resolution or ordinance that we have on the table. Does any other board members agree with Mr. Roussel? I'd appreciate if y'all can cue in. If not, I'll move on it.
Well, before it's moved on, I'd like to offer the following amendment. Under professional/consulting services, delete the entire paragraph 3 and insert, in all cases, professional consulting services contracts shall be approved by the board prior to execution. And this is consistent with the existing policy that's on the books today that was adopted by this government. So I'll offer that following amendment and ask for a second.
Would you be willing to do 10,000 as a compromise?
I offered that in the original negotiations with the administration and waited on a response back from them. And what I got was an email yesterday saying that we were moving forward today. And that's why my dilemma is that there's been no communication on my recommendation since the last meeting on that issue. And what this is an end around a policy that we created several months ago, maybe almost a year ago, on the $50,000 cap, which the board voted on. Now we're back to an end run, allowing the administration to spend up to $50,000 without board approval on professional services. And it's okay if you look at the policy in depth. All bid items and contracts are approved by the board when they're bid. However, when they're not bid and they're negotiated by the administration, then they're not approved by the board, which is really, an insult in the situation.
Mr. Roussel.
Yes,
Could I make public comment on the original resolution before you propose any changes?
Mr. Valle, the board's still speaking. We have other board members in the queue, Mr. Chair.
I'll wait.
Newberry,
I'm just
I was just getting ready to address
Thank you.
Mr. Valley on that. Thank you, though. I appreciate you helping. Mr. Valley, we have a couple of other council members in the queue, and we could just appreciate if you could hold your comment for just a couple more moments. Thank you very much, sir. Mr. LaFrance?
Yes. On line 6, ever since I've been on this council as a commissioner, and the lines read, whereas Plaquemines Port Harbor Terminal District, the port is a political subdivision of the state of Louisiana. I always did have a problem with that, and I made it perfectly clear that I will not support any legislation that has that in it, because that is totally against our charter.
Mr. Kognovich?
Yes, that, and y'all follow rules of Plaquemines Parish government, so we have a policy manual with the parish, and if y'all keep saying y'all with the state has a policy manual, so I was against doing the update policy for the port from the start. I voted against it, and I'll be voting against it here.
Mr. Valley, please.
Donald Valley, Plaquemines Parish in Jesuit Bend. I followed this originally when you all first proposed this, and the presentation was made by the outside consultants as to proposing a new plan. The public has not been involved in this. At this date, we've asked to see the workings and the updates as it comes through. That has not been done. We've asked for numerous information from the Port Authority, and it's very difficult, pulling teeth almost to the point of freedom of information request that would go on and on. In light of the magnitude of what this could do to the port and the parish and economic development and the future of the port, it's critical that the public have input into it, as well as all the vendors that might do business with the port and come down here, the type of people that would do it, that they have a chance to participate in the initial scope of the preparation of this. It's critical. I mean, if you all sit back and look at the effects of what this could do, and I'm not saying it's doing it, because we haven't seen the draft, nor have we seen any updates from you all. So I'm going to suggest to you all now that you defer this item for 60 days, give the public as well as the industry ample time, have it advertised and promoted across the board, and let comments come back that we could perfect a final draft, if so, if not, delete it. I keep hearing that the port can't go forward. We got all this pending. I've never seen anything stop you all from moving forward with the port's business on a daily basis, except things that you didn't vote that you wanted. So holding this feet to the fire and saying, you've got to approve this, is ridiculous. They can come to you with anything that they want. All my comments.
Mr. Valley, I agree with you. I think this is going to be a highly disruptive policy to existing vendors. They're going to have to go through a sort of bureaucratic steps to become a certified Louisiana business. I'm probably getting the terminology completely incorrect here, but it's going to be a pain for a lot of people that the port is already doing business with, and they probably are not aware of it. And there are a few things in here that do need to be ironed out, but I'd be willing to live with that because I feel like it makes the playing field a little bit more even. But I do think that we should have a little bit more control over some of the professional services that go out. Thank you, though. Mr. Forshey, please state your name and address for the record.
Rob Forshey, Belchase. This reeks of cats in a litter box. We rushing this thing through. We get notices sent out at 4:30 the day before a meeting, and yet you want this board to vote on it. This is totally unacceptable. The citizens of this parish deserve better, and shame on those that would vote for this piece of legislation without any type of acknowledgement from the citizens and enough notice for anyone to read this total document. So,
Mr. Bartholomew?
Yes, I would request that we defer.
All right. Mrs. Newberry?
Yeah, this has been on the books for 2 weeks. We've been working on this for a year, and to come to this, as far as the public, y'all been knowing about this for 2 weeks since its introductions. You have a right to review it, but some board members are very uncomfortable with this, so I will defer this for 2 weeks, and we will vote on this in 2 weeks. So if anybody from the public has any questions, please don't hesitate to contact the administration. Thank you.
Right, moving down the agenda, please. Thank you. Oh.
Could I ask that this document be placed on the website? I'm sure it's not, okay? The finished document, I'm sure it's not. Nothing else is. So I would suggest that this be put on the website so that the public can see it.
Mr. Sanders, can you please see to that?
Mr. Danny, can you do that before it's voted on? Yes. It's a public record. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all very much. All right, moving to the next one, please.
6C, a resolution authorizing the Port Executive Director, Menard J. Sanders, for and on behalf of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to name and accept the proposal of the Plaquemines Gazette as the official journal of the Plaquemines Parish Council as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Any questions from the board?
Offer.
I'd like to offer it. I'm sorry. Second. Second by Arborough. Hearing no questions from the board, any questions from the audience? Mr. Henry, please come to the mic and state your name and address, please. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Been all right? Arthur Henry, Belchase. Colonel, could you tell the public how much the port paid the Gazette last year? How
much we paid the Gazette?
Yeah. Well, they are your, they are the public, they put all the stuff in for the you got to pay them. Yeah. You don't pay for that?
Yeah. The budget for the parish.
Right.
It's charged per line. I can get that amount for you, but I don't know it.
You don't know it, huh?
Parish budget was what, 40,000?
But you know, people should know that.
Mr. Henry.
Yeah.
I know the parish's budget was somewhere around 40,000.
Oh,
And that's included in that 40,000, the port's minutes.
okay, the port included with the parish. Okay, all right. People need to know that, though.
Well, we hoping the legislature passes something where we could put them on our webpage as the official journal, and we'll save that money.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kogovich. All right, like to call a question? And it's 9 with Commissioner LaFrance absent.
D, a resolution authorizing Minard J. Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to amend the current agreement for business consulting services focusing on the port's procurement policy with J.D. Russell Consulting for the improvement and possible development of a new policy by extending the agreement and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Yes, this is just general housekeeping.
We need to offer.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll offer it next for a second. Apologize.
I'll second.
We have to extend the contract. It's just in a date. It has no costs to the port because we were supposed to do this within a year, and it hasn't taken place within the year. So we just extend this until December 31st. Is that correct? Yeah. So if anybody has any questions.
I got an amendment.
Any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Russo, you have the floor.
Yes, on line 25, I'd like to insert the following language as an amendment, not to exceed the current contract amount of $125,000. I'll offer that amendment. Next for a second.
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, your amendment is to not, it says this on line 25. What is that again? I'm sorry.
My amendment reads that on line 25, after December 31st, 2021, not to exceed, insert the language of the current contract amount of $125,000.
Current contract.
That's my language is inserted between exceed and $125,000, the following language. The current contract amount of $125,000.
Any questions from the commissioners? Any questions from the audience? And the first vote is going to be voting on the amendment. 9-0. Any questions on the actual legislation here from the board or the audience? All right. Hearing none, moving forward. All right. 9-0 again. All right. 6E, please.
A resolution of the Plaquemines Parish Council, acting as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, authorizing and directing the Executive Director to engage the Miller Niktakis Group and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Second.
Offered by Roussel, seconded by LaFrance. And Mr. Roussel, could you care to explain this just a bit?
Yes, this is Miller Niktakis Group who will be writing grants. I forwarded the contract to everyone a couple of weeks ago for your review. I had no questions. A couple of council members and I have discussed it informally, and I'll be glad to answer any questions at this time.
Are there any questions from the other commissioners or the audience on this item? All right. Hearing none, moving forward. The vote. All right. And it passes 9-0. 6F, please.
A resolution authorizing Minard J. Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to execute an agreement with sustainability partners and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm not going to move on this just yet. I want to open this up for discussion. I do need to offer it? Okay, so I'll offer it.
I'll second it for discussion.
So this piece of legislation is an agreement for us to go into a business deal for the port to move forward. So I'm going to turn this over to administration right now. I think they have a presentation, and we have some guest speakers here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chairman. My address today is directed to the people in this audience in the Plaquemines Parish. As the members of the board have seen this presentation as it has unfolded over the last couple of months. The decision being voted upon today is to extend the mainline rail to the proposed container terminal site. This is an action item that is addressed in what I will refer to often in my presentation as the Port Strategic Master Plan. The plan was commissioned by the Parish Council leadership starting around 2007 and finally approved in 2010. The Strategic Master Plan serves as a how-to guide for port leadership to follow in order to keep your compass needle leading in the right direction towards fulfilling the port vision. I would like to quote the method taken by the authors of the Master Plan, where it attributes a quote to hockey great Wayne Gretzky on page 3. They dubbed it the Wayne Gretzky approach in that a good hockey player goes where the puck is, a great hockey player goes where the puck is going to be. The authors attempted to assess what the future potential will be and what needs to be done to achieve that potential. They then used private sector investment preparedness as validation to determine what the best opportunities are to meet that demand. So, skating to where the puck is going to be took a very long process to study over 50 documents and publications that were reviewed and analyzed and ultimately led to the answer of a resounding yes to the following premise. And that premise was, if the Panama Canal does indeed deepen and widen, and the Mississippi River does indeed get dredged to the same aperture of the canal, will existing supply chains from the east and west coast to the interior of the United States shift to a new Gulf Gateway port that can be more efficiently serve the heartland of America, i.e. the U.S. Midwest? That resounding yes showed the leadership where the puck was going to be. It was going to be on the Gulf Coast at the lower end of the Mississippi River, and we all know it as Plaquemines Parish. Hence, the Port Vision Statement was born on that day. I'd like everyone to think of a vision statement as what you will be when you grow up. A vision statement directs activities and budgets and serves as a guiding light to be turned to the straight and narrow when one gets knocked off the course. And believe me, it's easy to get knocked off the course by budget restrictions, unforeseen events, or even politics. The vision statement of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District is as follows: to serve as the Gulf Gateway port to the heartland of America. That is what we will become as our port grows and reaches its full potential. That has directed my past actions and budgets, and that is where we are voting on today. Another stepping stone towards making that vision a reality. The master plan painstakingly outlined steps that needed to be taken in order to position itself to become that Gulf Gateway. It addressed the needed changes in the governance, separating the port from its position as a department within the parish government. It advised the need for an executive director to implement the Port Strategic Master Plan, and it even did extensive research to identify the most optimal site in Plaquemines Parish to locate the terminal. Today, we are taking another major necessary step outlined in the Strategic Master Plan, and that is the development of the rail service extension. Every step along the way in this port's development has an element of risk, and it is the job of the 9 guys in front of us today, the Port Board, to oversee the Executive Director, ensuring that all risks be identified, all risks be mitigated to the extent possible, and make decisions to move forward. Today, I am presenting to the Board my plan to extend the rail. a task identified in the Port Strategic Master Plan. I will point out the risk involved and implement steps to minimize those risks, all in the overall journey to skate to where the puck is going to be in order to fulfill our mission, that being to serve as the Gulf Gateway port to the heartland of America. In our audience today are members of our port strategic stakeholders that are partnering with the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District in our effort to reach our potential. These are must-have development partners as outlined in the Port Strategic Master Plan. With us today is Mr. Brian Harold with AP Moeller Terminals. He is the manager of the port terminal operator at the Port of Mobile, Alabama. Mr. Tom Kane with Sustainability Partners, who's assisting the port in funding the design, permitting, engineering, and subsequent construction and continual maintenance of the rail. Also with us is Pedro Santos, the CEO of Andalusia Energy, a beneficial cargo owner we will discuss in our presentation, whose cargo, when added to the commercialization efforts of the AP Moeller Group, will greatly serve to create a critical mass of cargo in order to mitigate the risk in this project. They are here today to answer any questions that may be in their swim lane. Lastly, a copy of the Port Strategic Master Plan can be accessed on the Port's website within the Public Notice section under the Resources tab. So before you is the PowerPoint presentation. Go to that first slide, Paul. The cover slide, yeah. This is phase one of the rail, but also serves as the first step in removing the rail out of Gretna and the first step in starting the container terminal. Slide, please. Interesting to note, in the strategic plan, there were 9 locations that were identified and were whittled down to 3 in the final analysis of where the port should be located. The final 3 were the AMAX, what they termed as the Citrus 2 property in Venice Port. AMAX was considered the most immediately available due to its road network and rail infrastructure, but was sold by the time I arrived. Venice was identified as a different opportunity as an offshore oil and possibly sport fishing jump-off. I'd like to read this to you, that the Citrus 2 port location requires more time to develop and is most likely the best served by a public-private partnership that would significantly reduce the final exposure and risk for the parish. This property has the potential for the greatest return on investment and long-term benefit for the parish in both revenue and employment. To attract port development, the extension of the rail service is a necessity, since truck access and volumes and cost to deliver would make any sizable port unlikely. Slide, please, Paul. So now I'm going to discuss all the 3 components and their roles in the makeup of the guts and feathers of any container terminal port. The ingredients are, obviously, you must have cargo. You have to have an operator to move that cargo from one conveyance to another. And you have to have the infrastructure available to move that cargo, be it rail, on another ship, or an airplane, or rail, or I said that, or truck. Slide, please. We'll talk about the first one, which is cargo. I cannot tell you how key cargo is. Getting a critical mass of cargo to the terminal is very, very critical. As I stated earlier, cargo pays the bills. I'm going to discuss one BCO in particular whose cargo would greatly contribute to that of the critical mass. Also understand, this cargo will be added to the huge amount of cargo that is presently being commercialized by the APMT folks, who will address this later by Brian Harold with APMT. But to this specific cargo carrier, this customer, whose CEO is with us today, this cargo customer is to be announced on Q3 of 2021. Presently, they are in negotiations with the beneficial cargo owner, we are, and the BCO intends to sign binding contracts this month. This BCO plans an FID in Q4. Their schedule is very aggressive. That is why we are trying to make their schedule our schedule to capture this cargo into the mix that is going to be talked about with the APMT. This cargo is brand new cargo to the state. It is not here now. It is a new project, and it is done by private investment. Private investment will follow the cargo, and the terminal operator will follow this cargo. Slide, please. Okay, yeah, okay. Just this BCO alone, which is new cargo to the state, would greatly contribute to the container growth of this state. Their first year of operation, the state would grow its overall containers in Louisiana by a 50% volume increase. That's incredible for one BCO. And by year 2, that number would reach well over 1 million containers. Slide, please. The next ingredient in that container port equation is a terminal operator. We are extremely fortunate. One of our strategic partners, as outlined in the Port Strategic Plan, Master Plan development, is AP Moeller Terminals. I was first contacted by AP Moeller Terminals in December. By May, they had announced their intentions to partner with the port and commenced a 120-day due diligence process with the port. They are the second largest terminal operator in the world, and they are owned by the largest carrier, Maersk, in the world. They have a huge appetite for investment in most of the terminals that they operate within. They have let us know that that is their intent at PPHTD. Slide, please. As noted in my second slide, the quote from the master plan, the rail service is a necessity. So in that case, we definitely need the rail infrastructure, and again, what this legislation is all about. Rail service is the most efficient transportation on the land. It is cost effective for long distances. It's cleaner with a greener option, and we fully intend to build a carbon-free green port. Without rail, you do not have a port. Every port has certain characteristics that are homogeneous throughout, and rail is one of those. Our current BCO requires all rail with their operation. And many of the BCOs that APMT is commercializing right now will bring to bear at our terminal will require this same rail intermodal service. I'd like to review with you a timeline which started back with the master plan well before I got here, all the way up to the present and the future. As I state in the master plan, they started in 2007, and it was completed in 2010. They addressed the governance, and that governance changed beginning January of 2013. It talked about the need for hiring an executive director to implement that strategic plan, and I was hired in August of 13. It also talked about where the port should be located. We purchased the land. The board approved it in 2013, and I don't think anyone in here will forget about the port millage. We had to raise a millage to purchase that land. We raised it 3 mills, and we paid the 3 mills between 2014 and 15. A present member of our board was the chairman for the next 2 years, Chairman Black. He knocked down the millage from 3 mills to 1.5, putting more of the onus, taking it off the backs of the taxpayer and putting the onus onto the port. And we paid it fully by 2018. That was 2 years earlier. By having that millage and being able to purchase the property, we attracted a very large Venture Global. They are still in the process of going through all their agreements and their permitting. They have announced, they announced in 2016 they'd be coming. In their FID, they stated was projected later on this year. Very quickly after that, we went into a very strategic partnership with the fellows from American Patriot Holdings. This unique partnership makes us totally different than any other port, and that is the ability to take a vessel that is geared for the inland waterway system and bring mass volume on a very efficient basis. And we signed that agreement in March of 2017, and they will be very integral in our port's future. The strategic plan emphasized the public-private partnership concept, mainly because we are a new port, we didn't have any money, and we had to partner with a strategic development partner. We hired LA23 Development in December of 19, and they have ever since then been bringing us public-private partnership ideas to implement our port. We also identified this cargo commitment that I'll be talking to y'all addressing today, this beneficial cargo. Actually, this opportunity was brought to us by LA23, Mr. Chris Fetters. He brought them to the table. They were ready to go into an operation in Brownsville, Texas. By listening to Mr. Fetters, they thought it was well worth them laying down their pencils and discovering what this Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District was all about. So they came to us, and we are now in the process of talking with them. APMT later on, and that was in November of 2020, Thanksgiving. As I stated, we signed a press release. APMT put out a press release in May of this year, and that brings us to where we are right now. And this is the mainline extension financing. And we're looking at financing and operating a package presented to PPHCD board, and that is what they will be voting on today. The first 18 months of a 24-month session will be the process, be a lot of public involvement, but it'll be the permitting and design of the railway extension. There will be funds that will be put forth by the contractor, and I'll get into that a little bit more, but those funds are allocated to do what is called the soft costs, the permitting, design, right-of-ways, et cetera, et cetera. The cargo commitment from the BCO that we're negotiating with, they plan on the fourth quarter of 2021. They want to go into an FID, final investment decision, which is very aggressive. And once again, that is pushing our timeline on a very aggressive scale. We will go into a 6-month construction after all the permitting and design of the rail asset has been finished. Again, very aggressive, keeping up with their timeline. And our goal is to go into operation of rail service now extending for customers of fourth quarter 2023. And based on our initial throughput in funding to eventually go around the Naval Air Station and get the rail out of Gretna for a rail expansion. Okay, slide please. Let's talk about sustainability partners. Sustainability partners, as I stated earlier, let's talk about them. Slide. Oh, there you go. Okay. They were introduced to us by our port developer, Mr. Chris Fetters. Guidance from me to him, as I told him we could not place any burden on the parish. No more millages, no more taxes or whatever. The parish has done, I think, their fair share in helping the port get going when they paid the millage for us to buy our first piece of property. And the parish could bear no risk. Also very important, we needed to ensure that the maintenance was an item in this contract. Coming from my experience in the Port of Corpus Christi, we continually deferred maintenance, and it really came back to bite us on the rear end. So that was a lesson well learned, that maintenance needs to be very much a part of this contract. So with that, SP will be the infrastructure services firm that provides the funding, as I stated earlier, for the construction and maintenance, and both major and minor maintenance for the mainline railroad extension to the proposed PPHTD main campus. And once again, this is something that is identified in the Port Master Plan as a huge stepping stone to starting this. And this SP contract will be used not just for the BCO that we have singled out, but for all the container terminal, for all the cargo that will come to the port and exit the port. It is a private funding, which is the method that was needed as a public-private partnership model that was illustrated in our Port Master Plan. Again, this was a way that the port was going to be able to start off on a shoestring budget, bring strategic development partners together to get what we needed and also to give them a good return on their investment. In the execution, exchange for construction maintenance, SP will receive from the port, will pay a usage fee, and we will have the sole use of that asset, the rail asset. These fees will be based on increased throughputs we'll be going to after construction of our existing tenants because their ability to increase cargo, expand, or keep what they have will be greatly enhanced, as well as the throughput rates of containers that are moved from rail for these usage fees. And this will provide a greater opportunity for development and expansion of our current terminus, below our current terminus, south of our current terminus. The next page just shows a few projects that SP has done. They're no stranger to this world. They are a national company. Give y'all a while to take a look at those. Slide, please, Paul. In the phase one, the roles and responsibilities, what is going to be required by this agreement? As for sustainability partners, they will do the design, the build, the permitting, and they will own and maintain the asset. They will pay the ad valorem taxes on this extension. I'll go into more detail about this, but that ad valorem equates to over $500,000 per year after construction. The port's roles and responsibility. The port will pay a usage fee to be covered by, during the first phase of the investment phase, it will be covered by our port revenues, and we can easily sustain that in our operating revenues. After it goes into construction and ready for operation, the fees will be covered by cargo revenue. The port will also manage the contract and sublease to the rail operator. So as part of our duties in paying the usage fee, we have total usage, and we can decide who will be on the rail, and we will manage that contract as such. The port will maintain jurisdictional and managerial control by this method. In the yield-only payments for the planning, engineering, and design investments, the port will be responsible for, and once again, we can handle that with our existing revenue. Slide, please, Paul. As I stated, this particular BCO has a very ambitious timeline, and we are attempting to make ours the same in order to capture his cargo into the critical mass that's needed in order to further mitigate any financial risk. However, let me be very clear. This BCO is not the reason to extend the rail. The rail extension, as identified in the Port Master Plan over 10 years ago, really stated this rail needs to be used to serve the entire container port and all its cargoes. This is very, very needed. But this BCO is driving the timeline, and if captured, His cargo will greatly enhance that needed cargo to make up that critical mass. So if you look at your left, the notice to proceed is what we'll be voting on upon today, which will grant me the authority to sign the notice to proceed, which will begin the investments into the soft costs. We're looking at a timeline of this month, June of 21. That will stretch for 18 months. During that time, we expect the BCO, they stated they wanted an FID in the fourth quarter, which is very quick. And in the third quarter, all the permits should be approved, and the construction would start in fourth quarter of 22. Once construction starts, all payments cease until the end of construction, and that we anticipate that taking 6 months. All's total, the final engineering and design and up to construction start for FY21, it will have a cost of $129,954. FY22 annual payment is $741,759. And then, as I stated, when construction starts, payments will cease until it goes into operation. Now, let's take a look very quickly at where this rail is expected to go, the trace it would take. We've done a lot of work with this. We want to ensure that it gets to the site as quickly and efficiently as possible. Presently, the terminus of the rail is right past the CHS grain elevator. So with this map, we'll see the potential alignment around the Ironton community. If you see in yellow, you will see the old existing rail bed that went through the heart of the community, and let me say in front of God and country, that is a non-starter. We will not do that. Our plan is to take the rail around to preserve the conservation easement that we placed in when we did the Plaquemines Liquid Terminal project, and also move it as far from the community as possible for no noise abatement. Slide, please. Our intermediate vision for transportation network as it comes into what we call the port proper, and that's parcels 1 through 6, is it would travel down Highway 23 on its riverside. As it gets close to parcel 1, there will be a rail crossing right there, and you see it in yellow in the box. We're careful to go around the land which is under lease option, which is parcel 2 and half of parcel 3, extending to the back of the property. It will run through the remainder of parcel 3, and as it makes its way up through parcel 5 and into the terminal location, giving it as even a glide path as possible. Slide, please, Bob. Okay, the potential alignments of the highway and rail alignments around the container terminal. As I stated, there will be a rail crossing there. First of all, this allows rail into what we refer to as the rectangle, which is riverside of parcel 1. It will allow the Kinder Morgan waterfront for future economic development. It also at that time will come across Highway 23 into parcel 1, allowing for parcel 1 to experience that economic development as well. As the terminal grows, this crossing will be remedied by a highway overpass, or we will eventually relocate the highway. That's the long-term goal. But again, this is going to be a nuisance, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's not. Venture Global coming here, there's going to be pain until they get in here. That will be a nuisance, but what we get from that is going to be far better than the pain that we experience. This too is going to be a nuisance. We'll have an at-grade crossing. Face it, it's going to happen. And we will remedy that with either a highway overpass, and as time goes on and the surge of cargo, we will have to relocate the highway to the back part of the property. Speaking of which, slide please, Paul. This is the future planning for our growth and the full realization of our potential. That being, we want to move our transportation networks to the back of the property to minimize any obstruction from the water to the intermodal part. Now, I highlighted in yellow square that northwest corner where the utilities come around the PPHTD land that's under lease option. When we finally do bring the rail and all the utilities around. I wanted to ensure that we were not impeding on that which is under the lease option, the PPHTD land under the lease option. So one more slide, Paul. This is a close-up of that. We worked with the Corps of Engineers, and there is ample room to bring not only the mainline rail extension, but also relocate Highway 23 into what I call that pinch point. Slide, Paul. Okay, now we're getting to the payment, the guts and feathers, and this also represents another risk mitigation point for our board members. This is also a control measure, as I say, to mitigate the risk. At the beginning, in every 90 days, the asset developer, which is appointed by sustainability partners, must come to the board, and he has to, what I call, sing for his supper. He has to report on what happened the last 90 days. He has to talk about the money that was released to him, invested by SP to pay for those soft costs. He has to report what was expected, what was performed, and what is expected to be performed over the next 90 days. So, following this, you look at the first tranche. In the event the board says, move ahead, Sanders, I will sign what is called Article 3, the Notice to Proceed, Exhibit 3, at which time the private investment schedule, SP, Sustainability Partners, will release the 3.25, the initial tranche, to pay invested in the soft costs. We do not pay any yield on that money until after 90 days. So in September of 2021, the asset developer has to appear before the board. He has to show the amount of money that was entrusted into his development schedule. He has to account for that money with what was done and what was accomplished. He has to report if he is ahead of schedule, on schedule, or behind schedule. And once again, it's a mother may I to move forward that the board has to approve. In the event the board approves it, then the second investment amount of money will be released by SP to that asset developer. In this case, $2.5 million. Let me back up one more time, once a bit. Once that first 90 days, we have to start making our yield payments. In that case, that monthly payment is $27,254 for those 3 months. In September, with the go-ahead from the port, a second tranche of $2.5 million will be released to the asset developer. And once again, at the end of those 90 days, he has to report to the board. He has to show what was released. He has to account for that money, what he stated he was going to do. And again, report, is he on time? Is he behind schedule? Is he ahead of schedule? With the board's satisfaction and their happiness, then the second, the third, and so on, the fourth tranche will be released. Each 90 days, the asset developer has to appear in front of the board, and there will be an accounting of all the activities. So the asset developer has to make SP and the board happy. And hence, the board has 5 off-ramps to monitor what was invested and track the progress. There's also a portal that is available that has full access to all monies and work being deployed and performed that any board member can look at any time and get a dial in on where we are on the project. All totaled, give me a slide, Paul. In 2021, the port payments will equate to $129,954. In 2022, the port payments will total $741,759 for a total investment by PPHTD of $871,713 during that period when Sustainability Partners has invested in the soft costs for this project. Slide, Paul. What does that mean as far as our community goes? The total CapEx is $50,000. $50 million. And the total investment during that time period is $871,713. That throws off, as I stated earlier, after construction, $525,000 in ad valorem taxes. And this CapEx, with that investment, will equate to that $525 in ad valorem to our taxing authorities. Now, slide, Paul. If you take into account the entire project, again, the investors will own the land, so we're still collecting the property tax. SP will own the rail, and we're looking at a container terminal infrastructure plan of about $1.1 billion. Mind you, this does not include any BCO buildings, any warehousing, any rail terminus, any intermodal. This is just these three things: the land, the rail infrastructure to bring down the rail, the extension, and the container terminal itself will have an annual tax revenue generation for Plaquemines Parish of $12+ million a year. So you see, in this manner, we're following the guidance of the Port Master Plan by utilizing the Triple P, the public-private partnership. We're maximizing the payback to the taxing authorities in the form of ad valorem. We are diversifying our economy from an oil and gas economy, and we're creating jobs and prosperity for our citizens. Now, I told you I'm going to tell you what the risk is and also what we're doing to mitigate that risk. Throughout the process, and like I say, we come back to the board all those 90 days, and let's say the board says we're not going to move forward. And we've already drawn the first two draws. Well, guess what, folks? The port has to pay that money back. So that is a risk that needs to be addressed. Now, why would the board say that? It can be any number of reasons, but you got to balance that with this SB contract is not done with just that one BCO in mind. This SB contract is done as outlined in the Port Strategic Master Plan. We need the rail extension to this port to start a container terminal. So that risk is there. How do we mitigate that risk? Very good question. First of all, I'm very fortunate that I had a very, very good port master plan that was shoved in my hands when I was hired, and I was told to implement it. It was very detailed. It's interesting, I haven't looked at it in a while, but when I prepared for this presentation, I went back to it, and I was just ticking off in my mind all the things that we did and how much of a crystal ball that master plan was and what a help it was. But how you mitigate risk? First of all, implement the master plan. Follow your master plan. It's done risk and reward equations throughout. It is a guiding path. Stick with the plan. Second way of mitigating this risk that the board has is, again, you have those approval in those interval steps. You're staying on top of it. Third, the board will have access to review that process and financial documents at any time through the portal, and those process and financial documents are reported to you minimally every 90 days. Once the rail access to the new properties are done, then those properties will also have business development, retention, or expansion of their plans, and I'm going to detail that out later on. But again, this rail access will serve the entire container terminal, not just one BCO. So tariffs from the cargoes will pay the freight at this point once it goes into operation. We hear a lot that, we do studies, we get permitting done, we don't use it, it sits on the shelf. 3 years later, we go through this, and I think Mr. Roussel has pointed that out very smartly. What about what we already did? Why don't we use those studies? Is the permitting no good anymore? Initial discussions held with NOGC and DOTD, they all confirmed that this preliminary work completed by this agreement, if you guys said we're not going to do it, that work is there. It's good. It can be used in the future. So this is not a wasted effort. Now, slide please, Paul. As I stated, with this investment comes risk. So let's look at the rail as it starts at the terminus, right past CHS, and comes down into the terminal container operation. First of all, CHS operation for their expansion. We have been talking with them for quite some time. They have told us they have been doing some risk analysis of all their ports. They really need to step up operations at their terminal, and they think that they can do this with a more robust rail installation. So with this rail and with the proximity of their location to where the container port would be, that's going to greatly enhance their business development, retention, expansion. Then look at the intermodal development in on parcel where you see it numbered by 2, and NOLA Oil by number 3. Just think what having that rail run through their property would do for those folks. It greatly enhances the value of their land. It greatly makes them more attractive to investment, to come in, just like NOLA Oil. It's a great idea to use the power of the port to assist them with things that we have at our fingertips, such as the bonding. But they become a pretty attractive investment by having rail run through their property. IMT has saddlebags on each side of them, vacant land. That rail is going to run through that land. Once again, it enhances the value of that land. I constantly get insight from the state or from GNO that someone is interested in property. Do any of your properties have deep access to water? Do they have X amount of acres? Then they always say, is it served by rail? And if you don't have those, you can't even compete. So this right here, this rail extension greatly enhances the value of those properties. If you look at intermodal development on our parcel 1, which is depicted by number 5. Once again, that's close to 300 acres that I can answer LED and say, yes, I have 250 acres that has rail access. That's a big plus for the port. Other parcels of land that the port has, the remainder of parcel 3, which is depicted by number 6. The intermodal development of the port-owned land that's not under option. that greatly enhances that parcel of land. And then as the intermodal development itself, as the line stretches and straightens as it comes into parcel 6, which is depicted by number 8, rail is so very important to this port. And to be that Gulf gateway that will go into the heartland of America, we have to have a robust infrastructure of rail. Bar none, it is a must, it is a necessity. Also, I would like to, at this time, allow our strategic partner with APMT, Brian Harold, to come forward because he had some very keen insight on not only mitigating what would be a risk to us by bringing this rail down, but everything that they can bring to bear, that they would bring to bear to any port that they took over as a terminal operator. This is very key, and what's interesting is they made the decision to come here before this beneficial cargo operator was even known. So, Brian, are you? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Good afternoon. Thanks for hearing me today. As Sandy mentioned, my name is Brian Harold. I'm Managing Director of APM Terminals, our facility in the Port of Mobile, Alabama. Also responsible for APM Terminals' interest in Plaquemines. So I've been spearheading and vetting this opportunity actually even before I contacted Plaquemines, so for about the last year. What I can say from APM Terminals' side, as Sandy mentioned, large terminal operator, we operate over 70 terminals worldwide. When it comes to greenfield projects, we've done a lot of them. I was actually trying to list out the ones that I know from relatively recent memory, and I honestly can't remember them all, but that number is well over 20. Our process for building a market around a container terminal is very thorough, very multi-pronged. I can speak personally from our time in Mobile, Alabama. So I'm based there. I've been there for the past decade plus. When we opened the terminal in Mobile, there had never been a container terminal there before. And we opened it really in about 2009. And we had very little cargo. The first year that we were open, we handled about 70,000 TEU. Now, as Sandy mentioned, one BCO here accounting for upwards of 300,000 TEU. That's a pretty big boost. But what we do is again more multi-pronged. As a major terminal operator and also a sister company being Maersk Line, which is the largest steamship company in the world, we have very strong strategic partnerships with the railroads, with all the Class 6-1 railroads that call this area, which is key. Right? In Mobile, there are 5. That has been an absolute pillar to building the Port of Mobile into a gateway. I think it's worth noting that the Port of Mobile over more than the past 5 years has been rated as the fastest growing port in all of North America. That's Mobile, Alabama, right? We're not talking about a huge metropolitan area. Our cargo that we service is not right there in Mobile. The vast majority of it is far to the north, the east, or the west. I can also speak to the points that are in your master plan about the feasibility of servicing major Midwest markets via the Gulf for cargoes coming from Asia. That is absolutely happening. It's happening in Mobile. The Canadian National is moving cargo currently via Mobile to service the Chicago market, and significant amounts of cargo at that, as well as Memphis, Tennessee. The way that we look at this, and to Sandy's point, our interest here was prior to this BCO announcing. And quite frankly, if that BCO were to announce tomorrow that they weren't coming, that would not change our interest in this project. We'd be disappointed, but it wouldn't change our interest in this project. When I came down here and looked at the area, what I'm most impressed with is how much land there is available so close to blue water. That just doesn't exist in this country, right? The land, however, is remote, and therefore we need these points of ingress and egress, particularly with the rail. right? If we want to service major markets, for example, and a big focus for us to this point in vetting out the commercial opportunities in Texas, especially Austin, Dallas, the rail is absolutely key. It's a non-starter to have a discussion, to sit down with a major shipper if you don't have rail. Furthermore, it's a non-starter to try to attract new businesses to your area without rail. One example I would give is in Mobile, we attracted in 2018 Walmart to open up a major distribution center, an import distribution center in Mobile. That facility is 2.6 million square feet. It's the single largest distribution center that Walmart has in this country. And it moves about 50,000 imports per year. In order to build our port to the point where Walmart would even consider us, meaning attract enough steamship carriers so that there's competitiveness in the port, that there's ample vessel capacity available to service bigger shippers like that. You have to have all these components. I'm the person that had to go in front of these steamship lines and try to talk to them about a previously unproven gateway and why they should come and call. And to Sandy's point, there are 3 questions they give you, and one of them is, do you have Class 1 rail access? If you don't, what they do by and large in their assessment is they do not consider you a Tier 1 port. And I can tell you that you don't want to be classified as less than a Tier 1 port when you're talking about the volumes that we want to move through here. But also what I can speak to, and we operate facilities within this country. We operate in New York, New Jersey. I actually spent 7 years there before coming to Mobile. We operate in Miami, Mobile, and in Los Angeles, California. We actually operate the largest container terminal in all of North America in Southern California with a major railhead. We have very strong strategic relationships, not only with Maersk Line, but with every major steamship line in the world. So very easy for us to get in front of these carriers and discuss these things with them, right? And I can tell you for certain that we wouldn't be here talking to you today, and our interest wouldn't be here if we hadn't already at least had those discussions with carriers and gotten pretty positive indications. So with that, I'll pause if there are any questions.
Could you talk about the re-emphasis in the Gulf based on what's happened with the pandemic?
Yeah, sure. So Sandy asked about the re-emphasis on the Gulf with the pandemic. So what we're seeing here, really nationwide and pretty much worldwide, the demand for trade is huge. I think everybody knows that, and you see that in the press, particularly in the United States, where just about every major port in our country is congested, heavily congested, especially on the West Coast. And that's not just in U.S. West Coast ports, but Canadian ports as well, which has really driven significant growing interest in the Gulf as far as reaching some of these major population centers. When we started in Mobile and getting out and knocking on doors and talking to shippers, what you find is shippers have they tend to have their habits, right? They've always shipped through Savannah, they've always shipped through Houston, or some combination of both, and it tends to sometimes take a big something big to happen to get them outside their comfort zone and change their minds. We've seen a few things like that over the past 10 years. We're definitely seeing one of those things right now. Again, to think that at one point, amid this congestion, the fastest way to get a container from Shanghai to Chicago was via Mobile, Alabama. Who would have thought, right? And that speaks volumes for what this gateway can be, particularly where if you spoke to any steamship line right now, just the idea of having a new gateway terminal that can have such great access to large population centers, I think it's a very wise investment.
What does PPHTD offer to you as far as your Latin America and Central America?
Yeah. So the question was about Latin America, Central America. Well, there's a few things here, but specifically the proximity to Central America is huge. The import market there is tremendous, particularly around the textiles, right? Textiles that are moving into the country. I think that there's a number of different things to look at here. One thing that's particularly interesting is with the company Andalusian Energy and the the shipments that they would be doing, which would be going to Central America. At least that would be a major focus, the markets that they would want to attack. And with that, vessels moving in between the port of Plaquemines and these major ports within Central American countries is a natural fit where there is open capacity, available capacity on vessels moving in this direction. That's going to be filled, especially in this day and age. Were there any other questions, Sandy, or anything you wanted me to touch on? No? All right. Yeah.
And again, the edit.
Brian, when we met earlier, and your associate Vim was with us, I asked the question, Maersk Line, as big as it is, terminals that you guys operate, why would you come here? I mean, what brought you here? And the comment was, well, we wouldn't even be here had this thing not been vetted through all of our committees. If you could expand slightly on that. And then the other point was, the statement was made, you guys checked all the boxes. If you could kind of elaborate on that for the public, I think that would help in our understanding of why you're here.
Sure. Okay, so I'll start with the process, our internal process to this point. So as was mentioned before, we've signed an MOU with PPHTD to collaborate on this project. And ultimately, where we aim to be is to be the operator of the facility, to assist heavily in the design of the facility, as well as the procurement of equipment. And ultimately, we expect to be an investor in the facility, right? Those things will come. In order for us to get to the point where to sign the MOU, as well as do the public announcement, which is something that we do not take lightly, what we have to go through is our investment committee to get that done. That means that it has to be signed off by our global CEO, CFO, CCO, et cetera, right? The very top management within our company to do that. We'll have a similar process as it relates to taking next steps, particularly around investment, which would have to be approved not only by our APM Terminals Board of Directors, but also by the AP Moller-Maersk Board, which the AP Moller-Maersk is the parent company, which is also over Maersk Line. So as you can imagine, that carries a lot of weight. As far as checking all the boxes, and Plaquemines checking all the boxes, there's I would put it like this, that first things first is good land availability, right? And that's something that major ports see consistently. You can go a little bit north and see that very clearly, where most ports in this country, you can't grow, you can't expand. There are either residential areas that are all around you, or there are other factors that aren't allowing you to get more land. That's a huge problem. That box is checked here, right? There's land availability. There's rail access, right, is the second thing. There's rail access here. Thirdly, the Mississippi River is absolutely key in our thinking here. Something that I would share is in Europe, I spent a few years over in Europe with our organization, and a huge difference in transportation in Europe compared to the United States is the use of the inland waterways for containerized cargo. The Port of Rotterdam is, if I'm not mistaken, the largest port in all of Europe. We operate a large facility there. At that facility, 30% of our cargo movements to or from a vessel is on a river barge. Right? In Mobile, we move 0 containers on river barges. Same in New York, same in Los Angeles. And it's not a matter of if container on the river, on river vessels can work. It's a matter of when. And when it does work, it's going to work on the Mississippi River. I don't think anyone would doubt that. The access to very large markets, Memphis, St. Louis, et cetera, it's keen for growth. So I would say that's another check mark. And then ultimately with that is the access to the large population centers that you have here from a logistical standpoint, of course. The rail connectivity, 6 Class 1 railroads. No other port in the United States has that, right? Outside of Louisiana ports. That's something that really can't be contended with. I think that's ultimately, those are the major reasons why we're here.
Are there any other questions from the board?
I have a couple more slides, if that's okay. As I said, the board members have seen this, and we got a lot of feedback from each time we had a meeting, and we started taking what I call frequently asked questions. These were the same questions that we were getting from each group, so I wanted to compile them and for you guys out there, because I'm sure you got same questions, but the first one, Paul, we looked at comparing this with public and private, and we got folks saying, hey, why don't y'all just buy the rail? Why don't y'all get bonds? Why don't y'all go to the state and whatever? So if you look at the difference, if you go public, you go private, the capital expenditure is going to be the same. We need $50 million. But on a private, going through the sustainability partners, our outlay is $871,000 and some change. Whereas if you go for a grant, and we've gone for grants many times, or we got scared of grants because we didn't have the money to go for them. But minimum, you got to put up 20%. And 20% does not guarantee that you're going to get it. And we have grant writers now saying the more you can put in, like some grants, people are putting in 40% of the cost to be awarded the grant. So we don't have that type of money, but if you look at $870,000 versus $10 million, quite a difference there. And then the parish, the taxes that come back to us in the form of the ad valorem, because we're not going to own this asset. Whereas if we did own it, and we don't even have the financial rear end to do it, but the parish taxes, by them owning it, not us, again, throws off that ad valorem. And then looking at the time is so stark. We're talking 18 months versus something that might take 5 years. So that's a pretty stark contrast. The next question we got from quite a few folks was, why the rush? What are you guys, why are you rushing this? And the rush was really because of the BCO. We have a crackerjack of a BCO in his timetable, in his commitment to his potential clients in the Caribbean is such that he's got to pick up and move. He's got to make a decision. He's got to go. He's going to go with, the Texas port or with us. With us, he sees what all the class ones available that could do for his product. He's enamored with it, but still, he has an FID coming up. He's got decisions to make. He's got a pretty hot-shot, rigorous timetable. So to be able to capture him, we have to make his timetable our timetable. Slide, Paul. Will the rail generate any other revenues to the port? Yes, yes, yes. We will have a management fee that will be provided to the port for controlling the exclusivity of the rail infrastructure. Slide, Paul. You always hear this. What's so important about owning the last mile? If you own the last mile, the port controls the rates. What a disaster it would be to have a third-party person controlling the rates in and out of your port. You might get someone that is an adversary and just raises your rates and nobody comes to your port. We're trying to make this port as efficient as possible, and that a beneficial cargo owner wants to use Plaquemines because you get the biggest bang for your dollar. So we want to control the rates, and that puts us in the driver's seat. Additionally, the port management of that last mile enables intermodal connectivity of the terminals below the current terminus. And we want to greatly aid our community with the clients we already have by giving them optionality, a good rail rate to get their goods to market, We have talked to some that say right now they're shipping their cargo via truck up to other ports, whereas they would greatly enjoy keeping that at home. What's the financial risk to the parish? Very important, and that's none. The parish is not part of the agreement, so the upside to the parish is the ad valorem that we can throw them. And that's $12.5 million annually to our taxing authorities. And Lord knows we need the money. You 9 guys are pulling your hair out up there trying to find money for every starving project out there. And, you know, raising a millage just doesn't sit well. Y'all know that. This is diversifying our economy and bringing income to our parish via ad valorem. Okay. What's the financial risk to the port? The ports, we are required to pay that yield only, on the yield only portion as we go through the soft costs. So yes, we have a risk. Can we absorb that? Yes, we can. We can easily absorb those 18 to 24 months in our present cash flow. But like I said, in the event the project's halted, the port's got to pay back that which was invested. So you can't just say that's no risk, because that is a risk. But I think that risk has been mitigated quite a bit by what the efforts of APMT will be doing, the possible efforts of getting that BCO. And again, we need the port, we need the rail, this infrastructure to bring on cargo. What is the impact to current industries operating in Plaquemines? I already talked about that, but our existing tenants will see a significant appreciation in their land values just by having that asset run through their yard. CHS, they'll be able to expand more efficiently with added capacity. NOLA Oil will finally have rail access to their terminal, which makes them a lot more marketable. Parcel 1 that the port owns, that becomes a commercially viable investment with rail access. The IMT and the two bookends on both sides of their facility that would greatly give them commercial optionality would be increased. Slide, Paul. What's the tax benefit to the parish? Again, we already talked about this, but the ad valorem, by the way this is set up, is tremendous, tremendous. And that's what building this port will do to this community. It diversifies our economy. If oil and gas comes back, that's fantastic. But we're not going to live and die by what happens in the oil and gas patch. And this does not include any warehousing or intermodal yards or any BCO facilities. Does this allow for rail relocation in Peters Road on a no-toll bridge basis? Lord, yes. The $50 million capital expenditure for this would be just getting it started. We're going to need a lot more rail, as you heard from APMT, and that's going to really push us to go to morph into that needed rail around the Naval Air Station, the Peters Road, getting it out of Gretna. This would be a panacea. This would be materialized by the port. The port would be funding this. This is a great benefit to all of our citizens, and for a lot of folks in West Jeff that plan on coming down here and looking for jobs. They're talking, they're saying, you're our port. Well, that would be a great moniker to have. But yes, this would push that rail relocation on a non-taxing basis. Once again, would there be a toll on Peters Road Highway, the bypassing bridge? No. There will be no toll assessed to the motoring public. The port would bear that expense. The timeline of the main rail extension construction, what is it? 18 to 24 months. It kicks off as soon as the notice to proceed is approved. And then what's the timeline of the mainline rail operation? Is projected to be operational by Q3 2023. What's the negative impact to the communities of the mainline extension? Like I said, it's going to cause heartache. Got a rail crossing there. It's going to cause congestion. We have to deal with it. We will be holding meetings in these communities with those community stakeholders, ensuring that we understand what their frustrations are and act accordingly. And lastly, how many trains will move daily? We anticipate 3 trains a day. What? We. Yeah. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's our presentation. Madam Vice Chairman, turn it back over to you for questions, comments, or...
Yeah, I'll put it out, see if any public comments want to be made before I make a final statement. Any questions from the board?
Well, Sandy, I'm quite impressed, and if this comes to bear, the face of Plaquemines Parish is going to be altered forever. It's going to be a lot different living here. With 3 rail crossings on LA 23, 10,000 linear feet of containers passing daily. You break it down by TEU. It's going to be a drastically different place to live, and we hope.
I'm not going to deny that, Mr. Chairman. It is going to be different. There will be 2 rail crossings, one by Peters Road where it comes into the main line, and then one right by Parcel 1. And that one will be remedied. Well, both of them will be remedied. There'll be a flyover eventually where it turns into Peters Road. And the long-term down by the port will move the utilities around to the back of the land. But yes, sir, it will be different. But it will also be different in that there'll be jobs here. A lot of them.
The elevated crossings, are they included in Phase 1, or does the public have to wait on those?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The elevated rail crossings, would those be included in Phase 1, or does the public have to wait on that?
Right now, we'll just have to take that temperature, okay? We know what we're going to do. We've got plans to put the elevations up. We have talked to the folks at DOTD. Again, this would all be used with private money, so it would be expedited, obviously under the supervision of DOTD, but it would be expedited very quickly. And again, we'll be working with you guys, for direction.
Sure. I think this board would like certainty before moving forward on that those rail crossings be included in Phase 1.
Okay. Can do.
But can you talk a little bit more about the fee schedule associated with the cargo? It seems like it's going to increase. Is there a rate chart or something you could share with us?
The fee schedule during the soft costs, sustainability partners, we're estimating gross costs of $50 million. And let me tell you how we got that. We're looking at possibly 10 miles of rail. So we figured on average $5 million per mile. So of that $50 million, we are earmarking 8 of it to be deployed, to be invested, to do what is called the soft cost. That's the engineering, the permitting, the right-of-ways, et cetera. You cannot use any tariffs to pay for that cost. It has to be borne at a hide. So we have checked, double-checked, triple-checked with our volume, our flow of monies through our budget. We can absorb it. It comes out roughly about an 8% yield on the use of their money at that time. It's not an interest. It's not a debt instrument. It is an equity investment. After that 18 months, fees will be suspended during construction. Then at the end of construction, that money will be rolled into the total, however much it costs to build a port. Let's say it's the 50. Hopefully it'll be 45. Don't know, but at that point, then that usage fee can come from port tariffs.
Mr. Sanders, the fee schedule I'm talking about is tied with the actual cargo.
I'm sorry, sir.
The fee schedule that's tied with the actual cargo. Can you explain that a little bit? It seems like it increases with volume.
Give me a sec. All right.
I'd like to know how that works.
Yeah. Exhibit 2 that was sent to y'all, this is really the meat of their contract. And it's based on an average, it's a revenue sharing basis on the average income revenue of the port over the last 5 years. So over the last 5 years, our average revenue equates to $5,191,248. And again, this is modeled off a baseline of revenue. So in an effort to keep that payment somewhat even instead of bouncing up and down, okay?
So the rail fees are tied with total revenues of the port?
I was just told that that's not the answer to your question. I'm sorry. Your question again, sir.
So, Paul, would you mind jogging?
You're talking about after construction and
I can answer this. Yeah, so the individualized, the container flows.
All right. Okay. I thought you wanted to know during the soft cost phase. Okay. Yeah. We pay a usage fee for the exclusivity of that track. And we will be, with that exclusivity fee, in turn, we can sublease that track to an operator. In this case, it makes sense to go to New Orleans Gulf Coast. We would be charging them a lease to use it. We would be also charging a fee per box. And from that fee, we will obviously be paying ourselves the management fee, and we will be paying SP for that which belongs to them, goes to them.
Okay. I would really love to see the rate chart when available, please. If you could just send that along to the board, we'd
Sure. Sure. You want to add to that, Tom? Okay. We'll get it to you. All right.
Has the rail alignment been discussed with Venture Global? Are there
That doesn't have to, because we're not going through Venture Global's property.
I think we might need.
And they are aware of that because I spoke to a representative of theirs.
We need to have some discussions with them to make sure everything is kosher. All right.
Say that again, Mr. Chairman.
We need to have some discussions with Venture Global to make sure everything is kosher. There's going to be quite a busy rail line going right next to their
They're aware.
large.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
They're aware. They've been spoken to about that.
I'm going to open it up to the next person. Representative Plaquemines.
Yes, sir. You know, you keep asking me to believe in you, and I tell you, you know, you prove it to me. I got a shovel and I'll dig the first hole. But the presentation you just give me didn't have nothing to do with the real, where the line was going, where the road was going to be moved to. Now you're going to have, the first phase is a rail crossing over Highway 23. Ask Mr. Black and the ones from Belchase how much they got complained to about for the bridge breaking down Saturday. Suppose one of them rail trains would break down over that road. How's the people from down the road getting up here? You know, nobody was talked to.
Mr. Blink stated he wanted to see that into the Phase 1 design.
Well, you never showed us that in the presentation the other day. Did Bobby get that presentation? It wasn't in the slide y'all showed us the other day.
I showed you the rail line.
Today. It was in the one today. It wasn't in the one y'all showed us the other day.
Yeah. Getting feedback. This presentation has evolved. I will say that, from frequently asked questions, what people wanted to see, what they wanted to see addressed, how does this work, etc. So we're taking that, and it's been a living document.
Because I know the 3 people from down the road never brought up that question to me, showing the rail, or brought it to you, but now all of a sudden you got it in the presentation.
Okay.
You know, like I said, the people down the road, they need to get up here, and nobody had a meeting down there or told them you might have another rail crossing to go across.
Understand.
And again, I keep telling you, they got FID, CEOs, NOUs, MBAs, and any other alphabet you want to do.
I understand.
I want one that's CON, contract. Somebody's responsible for it besides the people that I work for. And that's where I'm at.
Sir, understand.
Thank you, Commissioner Kogovich. Commissioner Rousseau.
Oh, thank you. Who is the asset developer?
Asset developer? Yeah. The asset developer is LA23.
So we're going to be making payments to LA23?
No, sir. We don't.
Who we make payments to?
It's SP's money, and they're investing. Asset developer will be the individual that has to come before y'all every quarter and talk about what money is going to be deployed, how it's going to be deployed, give you a schedule, and then also has to report on what was deployed last time. Did they meet schedule? Are they ahead of schedule or behind schedule? So the asset developer needs to make SP happy, and also has to make the board happy.
And who reports to us?
The asset developer.
But we don't pay him?
No, sir.
We pay.
It's paid by SP.
SP. Well, who do we
Sir.
make our payments to? SP?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The interim payments, and you said we could not use the tariffs. What source of revenue do we use?
That would come out of our port funds, out of our revenue.
I know, but
operating revenue.
Our operating revenue is based on
non-operating revenue.
So what revenue will we be using if we cannot use tariffs? Where do we generate those revenues from? For the interim payments.
Leases and options.
So Venture Global?
Yeah.
Payments already made by them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have more questions?
No, she's going to defer it on that this time.
All right, one other nuts and bolts question. Can a double-decker container car fit under the current Belle Chase Rail Bridge?
I can get that answer to you.
Very key that we know that. Thank y'all.
Okay. Madam Vice Chairman, I would
One more.
employ the board to call the vote.
Richie LaFrance.
Oh, Commissioner LaFrance, please.
It was introduced to discussion only.
Y'all expecting to vote on this today?
Yes, sir.
It was only introduced for discussion.
No.
I'm going to offer it.
I'm going to withdraw my second.
If he withdrawed his second, then you can't discuss until you get a second. So we have a motion on the floor by Ms. Newberry. There is no second.
Offered by Newberry, seconded by Commissioner Gui.
Okay. Exactly where do you expect this railroad to pass through Highway 23?
There'll be one crossing already identified that it comes out of Peters Road, and it will cross into the existing rail line. And there is another crossing that was illustrated in the presentation that we will cross the east side of Highway 23, right here right by Parcel 1, right past IMT. Slide is up.
And you expect to run Highway 23 west to the back levee?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Not initially.
How often would this train cross Highway 23? I'm speaking for the people on the southern end of the parish. How long would they have to wait because a train is crossing Highway 23?
However long it takes a Class 1 train, a unit train to pass. I can ask NOGC that.
I'm asking.
Oh, can you go to the bigger picture that shows the whole campus with the rail?
And we're going to detour Highway 23 to the back levee,
which is the
on the west side.
Lowest elevation.
And then Highway 23 was going to come back to existing Highway 23.
Mm-hmm. As it goes around the container terminal, which is Parcel 6. And that would give minimum obstruction from the water to the intermodal site.
So this is the alignment that is proposed.
Yes, sir. Long-term plan.
It's in line with operation.
And y'all expect for us to make a decision on this without consulting our constituents?
Just the planning.
This is what y'all presented to me today.
That is correct.
So you expect for me to make a decision?
Ms. LaFrance, the first phase, which we talk about the soft cost, the planning, the designing, also includes the stakeholder engagement process. So when we talk about planning design, how this will work, in those 12 to 18 months, that's where that process will happen. So that's in line with the operation to make sure that we're working with SP, New Orleans Gulf Coast, to communicate with the local stakeholders to be involved in that planning and design process.
So in this planning design process, would there be any deviation? If the people from Port Sulphur, Parish, Home Place, Venice, if they don't agree with this alignment, would there be any deviation?
If the council decides that, that's what the whole purpose of the plan design is for, to engage the board, the staff, NOGC, SP, and those communities, sir.
But wouldn't you consider that would be a decision hard for me to make without the input of my constituents?
That's what the 12 to 18 months are for, sir, to do that.
I would like to have the input of my people before I make a vote.
Okay.
That is understandable.
Madam Chairman, Vice Chairman.
Huh?
As for the vote.
I'm still on the board.
Commissioner Russo?
Mr. Sanders, you don't sit up here and have the right to call for the question. You might want to push your weight to that way, but, we have other people that like to make some comments. And
yes, sir.
Ms. Newberry made the offer. It was for discussion only, so I was going to hold up and see if you were going to solve some of the problems that I had before I made a decision. One of the main problems I have is that this rail is talking about extending to a piece of property that we do not own. When will the property be acquired and by who? This is a rail to nowhere right now.
It's a private transaction that our developer here can address. It's going to be done by private investors.
I understand, but when will it be done? I've been hearing that for a year and a half now.
Well, then I'll ask him to address it.
Good afternoon, Chris Fetters with LA23. So the direct answer to the question is we've been engaged in the property acquisition for roughly around 7 months now. There was a lot of delay in the past year determining if the port was going to step forward and buy the land or not. That concluded somewhere around third or fourth quarter last year, as you may remember in one of the meetings, on whether the port could engage in order to move forward or not. Since that time, we have sought out and secured agreements in writing with two of the large landowners that are down there, and we're prepared to execute those contingent along with both the rail as well as the work you understood from the BCO today and APMT. So we look to execute that probably sometime within this next period or first 90 days that go along with this initial phase of the rail alignment.
And I think that the timing ought to be coincided with the execution of the rail contract with the purchase or the securing of the property to know that we have a rail that's going to go somewhere. Because I've heard this story about acquiring property for a long time. And so if we coordinate that, you might have a better plan in mind, at least in my mind. In the presentations that I heard from APM and all, it was understood in my mind that they expected us to provide the property. Yeah. So APM is now willing to buy the property for the port site?
No, the investors are. They would prefer us to buy it, but...
Well, I have my notes right here, and I'll be glad to refer them. I didn't want to get into this level of discussion because I thought she was introducing this for discussion only. But to call a vote on this without having the property secured, I think it's premature. And if you can tie those together to say that we're going to have this site, it's been secured, and we're going to run a rail to it, and we're going to be on the hook for it, then I think that makes sense. Now, if the BCO wants to sign a contract with us as well and put the other phase of financing in place to protect us on the cost of the rail, that would be even better. And that would be what I'd be looking for.
So having some assurances from DOTD that relocating the LA-23 is feasible on that very low property, which does not currently have an adequate pumping station, is going to be key for support of other board members as well, I imagine.
That's what the study's going to produce and what has to be done in the engineering necessary to do all that. And I think that's a smart thing.
I think all these components that comes together. I mean, I think it's to sit here and have the land and the rail and the investors sign at one time in one particular piece of paper would be awesome. That we all know it's all coming together, but that's not possible. So I think, in my opinion, that we need to start somewhere. And the rail is such an important asset to any development that we bring here to Plaquemines Parish. And of course, we have unanswered questions, and some council members or some members of the public aren't happy because it's not their vision. But this is a vision that has been working, that we have been working with the people, the public, and the board. We've hired Sandy back in 2013. This is what we've been building up to. So this isn't nothing new. This project is for the industry, for the investors to come here, and that is new. And we're just trying to understand a better way of coming across on how to get it to the public. This is just an important project for Plaquemines Parish. I think this will bring jobs. We can sit here and we can talk about this and we can talk about that and what's not good. And those are things that we're going to come to the public and let them know and let them understand what we'll bring into the table, how important this project would be for the people of Plaquemines. We have been devastated by Hurricane Katrina. We have no oil field. We have to bring jobs to Plaquemines, and this is where we start. We have been working on this for 7 years now, and this is where we are. And yeah, I am ready to move forward and offer this and ask for a vote, so yes.
Commissioner Rousseau?
Yeah, my only comment is that, I've been hearing about the property acquisition, and right now I see us extending a rail to a property that we don't have secured. And that, to me, doesn't make sense.
You're missing a voter.
Commissioner Goy?
The reinforcement of the master plan, as you presented it, by reading those components, brought me to a point where you've been very consistent. And all of the actions that this board and previous boards have taken have been consistent with that master plan. We have identified the site. We have identified that the river had to be deepened, that the Panama Canal had to be deepened. We went through that process. And as we stated earlier about checking boxes, we've checked the boxes. We're at a point now where we have the investors lined up. But we know without a rail, they're going to go somewhere else. So what have we been trying to achieve? We've been trying to achieve where we are right now is to develop this port. We've never been closer. We may never be closer. I do have a concern about the rail crossing Highway 23, but there is no other way. So we have discussed in meetings how to mitigate that. And we have all come to the realization that this is not permanent, that this is going to be a crossing that has to take place during the interim so we can mitigate with either the overpass or the relocation of Highway 23. That's not secret. We knew that. And believe me, it is going to be an inconvenience. Have we ever reached a point where there's a time frame of the inconvenience? Do we know, given what conversations we've had with DOTD as far as timelines, with SP as far as timelines, with the BCO and their necessity for needing the rail, do we have an idea of how long this inconvenience is going to be? Because we know there will be a public inconvenience. Do we have that? Do we have an idea?
I think
Tom, maybe you?
be ascertained during that 18 months. I mean, we'd have to talk to the public.
Yeah.
And like the chairman said, he wanted to have that in phase one, to look at that overpass.
Oh, I agree. Those comments were great. I know when we talked, the numbers were thrown out, 6 months to a year it may take. Is that a realistic thing, 6 months to a year? That we may be inconvenienced? I guess we'll find out in the phase one.
Talk to an engineer, but.
Okay, I yield.
Look.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Please, this is the chamber where we sit at. Could we control anybody from coming back here?
Yeah, I didn't see, somebody must have come through the backside.
No, Paul came right up the side.
Oh, got it. Duly noted, Commissioner LaFrance. So look, it's okay to develop. We need to. We get it. And this is probably the most thoroughly baked plan that I've seen so far come out of the port. And I'm very impressed with it. The thing is, though, not without full public understanding and input. This is really going to impact people's lives here. Could you imagine if you lived in Jesuit Bend and you're having a heart attack waiting on a train for an ambulance to come and get you? Or you're rushing to the city for some function, bam, you're stuck behind the train. The other day, Bellchase looked like Bourbon Street on Mardi Gras Day. You could hardly move. There was traffic stopped in all directions. And it was just, the bridge was out and, we had a little party. And having large amounts of industrial traffic in Plaquemines Parish is going to change the face of it. And we probably need a little bit more time to make sure things are right. The master plan was developed by an out-of-town consultant that doesn't really have any teeth, any skin in the game here. Not that again. The master plan was developed by an out-of-town consultant, Trident, correct? It was one of the firms involved, and then the
correct.
other. And
it's
then
approved by the council.
It was. The thing is, though, it's a new council now, and we want to make sure that the people's quality of life is impacted as little as possible. I think that's a fair thing to say and to do. We need to make sure we're doing our jobs for the public. So it's okay to try and balance these things out. Anyway, we just need to get this right, or we need to not do it at all. I yield. Mrs. Newberry?
Yeah, so the main thing here, and some statements are so true. So we support this and we don't get the property, what happens? We're on the hook, right? So now we're going to have Chris Fetters to get up here and explain to the board and to the public where we are with the property, or where the rail needs to go through. Chris?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So, I'm sorry? So I have written agreements with both parcels 4 and 6 as we stand right now. And I'm happy to share those with the council, show them what they are. Terms are very direct and straightforward. With regard to parcel 5, we've had a series of meetings with that ownership group, and they've made it very clear of what their path forward is to execution, and we feel very comfortable with that as well. But 4 and 6 are ready for execution. So I can provide those to the council for review if you would like. And then with regard to the other comments, if I may, the point of this phase of the work is to identify, document, review, and engage the stakeholders of the communities with written proof as to what the plan is, what the alignment may be, what the impairments may be, what the impedances may be with regard to development of this project. Right now, all we can do is talk about in hypotheticals. The purpose of going through this phase is to provide written plans, documented and stamped by engineering professionals that show all of the things that you guys are concerned about. That's the part of this phase. The uniqueness about the SP opportunity is that we do this in 2 phases, the first of which is the design process. There is no obligation to go to construction. There are risks involved if you decide to stop it, yes, which Mr. Sanders has outlined. But if you feel that it is too much of an impedance, you do have the control to stop the project. When the project goes into construction phase, it's only done on a fully approved permit that has to engage all of the concerns that have been outlined by the council. So that's the purpose of this phase of it, is to provide you everything that you're asking for in a written form by engineers. Thank you.
Mark?
Mr. Blank?
Oh, certainly, Mark. Please.
Mr. Chairman, Donald Valet, Belchers. We've all heard it, and the first thing I'd like to do is
Who's running the meeting?
thank merge people from coming over here and looking at our port. Y'all run a good operation. I've done business with you before, and what you've done in Mobile is an outstanding operation, I can tell you. If you were to come here, we would all welcome it, and I can tell you every one of these people sitting on this council and the public would welcome it. There's a lot of unanswered questions that have been going on for a long time, 8 years now, that we get piecemeals when it gets pulled out of the port. We don't agree with everything they do, and it's not because anybody else has any plans. Ms. Trueberry, you made a lot of statements that were incorrect about the public out here. Okay, what we want is answers. We want to see it done prudently, and we want to see it done timely. I've suggested that you all have another special meeting where if you would come back over and your people would get in here, that we can have a roundtable discussion, informational public meeting, that we can all listen to what's there and see how we all can work together to achieve the goals of what we all want for the port in this parish. We want you here, I can tell you. I'll get 15, 20 people to help you come over here if you do. You have a good operation. Most of these people up here have valid questions. The public has valid questions. They get piecemeals here and there, and it's really got to pull it out the port. And it's not your fault. It's how it's been run before. There's too many people who got a foot in the pie trying to make their own little deals here and there as to what's happening. Everything's been top secret for so long, it's time we get it out in front of the public and make this port be valid. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Valley. Commissioner LaFrance. Oh, Kognovich, please, go ahead.
Gotta put me in the queue. I'm not looking at being inconvenienced as I can't make a party in New Orleans. My constituents have an hour-and-a-half ride in an ambulance. If that train's across the road, nobody knows how long it's going to take then. How long is the trains going to be that's going to cross there? And we all know trains break down. Railroads break. So, that's what I'm looking at. I could care less about going to a party. If I'm going to a party, I'll leave earlier. But, we borrowing the money from SP, right?
No.
To do the soft costs?
No, the port is not borrowing any money.
To do the soft costs?
No, they're investing.
So let them invest. Why we got to pay anything for it? It's their rail, right? At the end, it's their rail.
It is their rail.
Let them do the soft cost startup.
That's not how their plan works.
This is how ours might work. They want the rail.
I mean, we're investing to pay a fee later on the cargo that travels over the rail line. Is that not correct?
I'm sorry.
We're investing, we're paying money up front, and then we're paying a fee on the back end to move cargo over this
We're
rail
paying a
line.
yield on their money. They're putting their money on an equity position. It's not an interest. It's not a debt instrument. It's not a mortgage.
So just to be clear, we are paying money on the front end. Then we won't appropriate any money for it then, Paul. If we're not going to pay any money. Money is going to leave.
We have to
Plaquemines,
pay a
Port Harbor,
usage
and Terminal
fee.
District. Please let me get my statement out, Mr. Sanders.
Go ahead.
So we're going to pay money on the front end for the rail line, and then on the back end, we are going to pay a fee to move the cargo over the same rail line. Money is going to leave the coffers of Plaquemines, Port Harbor, and Terminal District on the front end in furtherance of this rail line, and on the back end, we will have to pay there will be a fee assessed on the cargo. Correct. Just want to make that clear and understand that.
We're paying a usage fee for the exclusive rights to use that asset.
Thank you. Commissioner Rousseau.
But my comments are the same about acquiring the property. I understand Mr. Fetter's comments. Still got a parcel that's in the wind. If you can secure the property and come back with a deal that says the property is there, we run on the rail to the property and we have a deal. Beneficial cargo owner steps up and has a contract and says we're going to put the cargo on the rail. Everybody's happy. And no matter whether you call us, we're not borrowing money. And I understand the legalities of making this happen without saying we're mortgaging or borrowing or anything like that. And it's an innovative way to get somebody to put up money, and how it gets paid back is with payments. The return on the investment is 8% from what I understand. So you might not call it a loan, but at the same time, it's nobody giving us any money. There are other questions. The timeline that Dr. Gouy referenced, I don't see any way that the timeline will be met because of the acquisition of right-of-ways, for one thing. Who's going to acquire the right-of-ways? I've asked this several times and never got an answer. Who's going to expropriate them if they don't have a willing seller? The other thing is, you said Venture Global, it doesn't go through their property. Well, it doesn't go through their property that is designated for the facility, but it does go through the property that they have optioned behind that. Correct?
That's correct.
So to mislead the people and say it's not going through Venture Global's property.
It's not their property.
They have an option on it. Okay, they're going to buy it. If they come here, they will buy it. And then it'll be their property. And we have to go through.
That's not how it's set up.
Look, all of these voodoo mechanisms to disguise what's really going on is something that the public is aware of or should be aware of. And you're telling me that the corridor that you showed on the map does not go through the property that Venture Global has an option on. Are you telling me that that's not the case? Y'all get your stories together.
Well, you don't have to say that, Mr. Russell.
But Mr.
Ask the question.
Yeah, but Mr.
We're trying to
Rathburn,
answer
but
it.
let me say this. I've been watching you out there when people make comments and you've been jerking your head around like a clown.
You've been running back and forth here, Mr. Russell.
That's my privilege, just like you have the privilege to jerk your head around.
Here, and mine is to sit here.
So I get to say what I want and you get to say what you want.
And I'm doing so.
Okay, so I asked a simple question. Does the alignment of the rail go through the property that Venture Global has an option on?
With the port, no. It has. Do you want to hear it? Talk about shaking your head and everything. I'm telling you the rest of it, Mr. Russo.
I already know the answer. That's why I asked the question.
Okay.
And I asked a simple question. I didn't say the port. I made it very clear before that does the rail alignment go through the port, through the property that Venture Global has an option on?
It has an option on a pipeline servitude on that property. That's what it has.
It has more than that.
Okay, well, show me.
No, you call Venture Global, they will show you.
We're going to
They've already told me.
We're going to move on. Commissioner Newberry?
A call for a vote.
A question has been called, Mr. Forshey. My apologies.
I've been back and forth, Richie. This. I have been standing up and sitting down, and I haven't been called yet.
Got it. Okay, all right. Please, go ahead. My apologies.
Okay.
I was wrong.
Okay, so my first question is, I have heard nothing mentioned about the rail owner that goes from Gretna through Belchase right now and what his plans are. I have also seen nothing on this nice presentation that we had about the rail yard that is supposed to go in off of Walker Road. And again, nothing has been said in this grand presentation where the hockey puck, where we're going to be, where the hockey puck is going to wind up. We have seen nothing in reference to a bridge crossing the Intracoastal Waterway at Walker Road. So with all of those statements being made, where are those alignments, and why aren't those guys here saying, yes, we approve 100% of this rail going in and tying into our rail? I'll leave it there.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I think Mr. Fetters would like to come up and maybe answer some of the questions.
Call for you call the question.
You allowed Mr.
He's already been twice.
Forshey. Sorry about that.
Mr. Fetters, please.
So the direct answer to the question is that the references that are being made are regarding the Peters Road project. This specific project is the main line. That is to extend it from its current terminus down to the campus. With regard to has the operator or the owner been consulted, they absolutely have. If you know anything about this business, you cannot do anything with regarding railroad without consulting both the NOGC, which is owned by Rio Grande Pacific, nor can you do that without having any conversations with the Union Pacific, which is the Class 1 interchange in that area. All the details regarding the Peters Road project have already been planned and approved by FRA through a FONSI and would have to be revisited when we move to the Peters Road extension project to update it to current conditions. So all of those questions are very valid, but they're very relevant only to the Peters Road program at this time. The use of the mainline extension and the utilization of it by NOGC are part of the plan and study from a capacitance, traffic, and impairment issue. Those will all be published for public comment as we go through the permit process. That, again, is what we're asking for here today, is the ability to have SP invest in this so that we can produce all of the documents that lead to all of these questions for the public to review and have all of their input on before we go to any construction.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to respond.
No, I'm sorry, sir. We've got to move on.
Yep. The guy made reference to my statements. Okay, so I'm going to state this. He did not answer this question. What is the plans for the railroad going through Gretna and through Belchase? Okay, that wasn't answered. Okay, and then this problem with the bridge not showing, if it's planned, why isn't it on this presentation and the drawings that have been presented?
I think those things would lead to more 9-0 votes. But yes, I agree with you.
I think as we move forward, the public will be aware of what is taking place. And as Mr. Fetters said, we will have open comments and open meetings to the public so they can get a full understanding. Is that right, Mr. Sanders?
Yes, ma'am. Are we ready to vote now?
Nope, press it again back to
Machine is open. Fails.
Thank you very much. I am a resident of Plaquemines Parish. I don't think you all live in Plaquemines Parish, do you? You live, were you caught in all the traffic Saturday? So you know the inconvenience you're talking about. You have not addressed the people that live here. That was so disrespectful, I must tell you. I put presentations together. That was a great presentation and slide. It didn't have one thing about the people that live here and are going to be affected by this. And to push these council people into something so quickly, I personally don't like it because I voted for these people, and I want them to respect us enough that they can come and tell us what we're going to do and what we can expect to be inconvenienced. And as far as your road or your railroad, you can make a little bridge and go over the top of the railroad. This is from just sitting here listening to you. I find that a real good solution, but that's just me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, moving down the agenda, please.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Russo.
I've been asked to reintroduce this before we close the meeting out.
New business? We're on new business?
Yes, sir.
Earlier today, I introduced a resolution on behalf of NOLA All Terminal for a project that is moving forward, and I would encourage anyone at this table that has any comments or questions concerning that to reach out and talk to me or talk to NOLA All Terminal, because I think that it's a project that you all might want to be discussing before the next meeting.
And we're going to wait on the introduction. We want to have as much time as possible, maybe even some community meetings. So we'll hold off on that. Ms. Barb. Approval of the minutes, please.
I have an introduction.
This is for Commissioner Newberry. A resolution authorizing Menard J. Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to execute an agreement with sustainability partners and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
This is a reintroduction of what just failed for the public's knowledge. So it'll be coming back again.
Number 8, approval of the May 27, 2021 meeting minutes.
Offer. Offered by Roussel, second by Kognovich. Machine's open. Motion adjourned by Roussel, second by Blink.
Councilmember Gouy. Mr. Bartholomew, thank you.
I'd like to call this meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Council, serving as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to close at 5:26 p.m.